It all looks so ordinary at first glance. Quiet mountains, empty roads, government signs warning you not to linger. But behind those warnings lie stories not meant to be told. In Virginia's Blue Ridge, Mount Weather hums quietly beneath layers of stone and secrecy. In Utah, near the edges of Dugway, strange lights flicker where no lights should be. And in Oregon's Mount Hood, unseen eyes watch from the deepest shadows. The official explanations are always simple, routine, necessary. But sometimes, those who come too close find answers far more unsettling. And once seen, they can never be unseen. Welcome to Weird Encounters, a place where the ordinary fades into shadow and the unexplainable comes alive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and become part of our ever-growing community of the curious. Now prepare yourself, because what you are about to hear is not for the faint of heart. Hidden deep beyond the hiking trails and tourist spots, behind dense forests and high mountains, are places few people ever see. In these remote corners, secret operations unfold, activities hidden from the public eye. And one journalist stumbled into a world that shook his understanding of national security and his own safety. Hello, I'm sharing this because I have nowhere else to turn. You might be one of the few who will believe what happened to me. I was once a journalist. Investigative reporting was my life until this assignment destroyed my career. 2 years ago, in late summer, I started investigating government continuity programs, those secret bunkers built to keep leaders alive during disasters. One site kept coming up in my research: Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center in Virginia, located in the Blue Ridge Mountains next to Shenandoah National Park. Officially, Mount Weather is listed as a FEMA training center, but rumors from former military sources suggested otherwise. There were whispers about underground laboratories, secret experiments, and classified projects happening beneath the mountain. Some dismissed it as conspiracy talk, but I heard enough to take it seriously. After thorough planning, I set up camp near the facility, using old maps and topographic data to find remote areas in Shenandoah that offered good cover. The dense forest allowed me to stay hidden while watching the area closely. Every morning, I watched a consistent routine unfold. Large, unmarked white buses with dark-tinted windows arrived early, always accompanied by black SUVs that were unmistakably federal. They passed through guarded gates and disappeared into the mountain. At sunset, the same buses returned, full again. I never saw anyone walk in or out. It was a closed loop, always tightly controlled. The pattern was unsettling in its precision. Every move was calculated and repeated without fail. Whoever was inside those vehicles remained completely hidden. A few days into my surveillance, I started noticing strange phenomena. Deep, low-frequency vibrations came from underground, steady, rhythmic pulses that suggested the operation of massive machinery below. Periodically, loud metallic clangs rang through the ground, like enormous mechanisms shifting far beneath my feet. From a ridge, I observed ventilation towers sticking out from the forest canopy. These vents occasionally released warm, chemical-scented air. Sometimes, faint bluish-white flashes of light glowed from the openings, briefly lighting the trees before fading away. Everything I saw and heard pointed to extensive underground activity, though its purpose was unclear. On the 7th night, things escalated. The usual night sounds, crickets, frogs, even the wind, suddenly stopped. A strange, soft siren tone came from below. It wasn't loud, but felt deeply unsettling, vibrating through my entire body. The forest became completely still, like nature itself was paralyzed. I had gathered plenty of evidence, photos, recordings, and notes, but I wanted more definitive proof. That urge led me closer to the main entrance, hidden under cover of night. As I moved through the thick trees, I saw a group of people emerge from the facility. They wore tight silver suits that shimmered under the floodlights. Their helmets were large and smooth, hiding their faces entirely. Their movements were robotic as they loaded sealed metal containers into secondary vehicles. I have no idea what was inside those containers. Unfortunately, I was discovered. A powerful spotlight suddenly locked onto me. Voices shouted, and armed operatives in unmarked tactical gear quickly surrounded me. They moved fast and professionally. Escape wasn't an option. They confiscated everything: my cameras, electronic gear, notebooks, even my personal items. My hands were tied, and they blindfolded me before forcing me into a vehicle. The drive was long and winding. I lost all sense of direction. When the blindfold came off, I was in a small, windowless room made of concrete, lit by bright fluorescent lights. With no windows or clocks, I had no way of knowing how long I was there. The questioning began immediately. Different people rotated in, demanding to know who I worked for, who sent me, and what I had seen. I told the truth. I was a freelance journalist acting alone. Finally, a well-dressed man entered the room. He spoke calmly, like he was negotiating a business deal. He explained that I had seen highly classified operations and that continuing to talk about it would bring severe consequences. He offered me a simple choice: stay silent and walk away, or face complete ruin if I ever spoke out. The next morning, they dropped me off at a gas station in Front Royal. My equipment was never returned, but that was only the beginning. Soon after, my editor killed the story. My press credentials were revoked. My online accounts were shut down. Colleagues stopped returning my calls. Sources who once helped me completely disappeared. Rumors spread that I had suffered a mental breakdown. My reputation was destroyed overnight. Then came the financial attacks. My bank accounts were frozen under the excuse of security audits. Even my family received quiet warnings to stay away. Every part of my life, career, finances, relationships, was methodically dismantled. Despite everything, I remember what I saw. I saw those buses, heard the underground machinery, witnessed the strange lights, and observed people in those unrecognizable suits. Whatever is happening under Mount Weather goes far beyond emergency government operations. Whether it involves advanced experiments, biological research, or something even more secret, I may never know. But it's real. Now I live quietly, mostly off the grid. But sometimes I still feel faint tremors under my feet, like whatever is beneath that mountain continues its work. The national parks, vast, open stretches of wilderness. They promise freedom, peace, and escape. But in the far corners of these wild lands, sometimes you find things you weren't meant to see. Secrets not printed on maps, facilities that officially don't exist. Hidden places where the government has been busy with things that might make even the most skeptical among us shudder. And occasionally, someone stumbles too close. Closer than they should have ever been allowed. I've watched your channel for a while. Never imagined I'd have my own story, but this happened to me recently. It was last spring, late April. I had taken a solo road trip through Utah. I needed to get away, clear my head. I packed my gear and decided to camp out in Fish Springs National Wildlife Refuge on the edge of the Great Salt Lake Desert. If you've ever been there, you know how desolate it is. Endless salt flats, dry scrub, and not a soul in sight. It felt like I was on another planet. But that place sits uncomfortably close to Dugway Proving Ground. You probably know it by its nickname, Area 52. A place with more rumors than answers. Chemical tests, biological experiments, advanced aircraft, and maybe, just maybe, things we're not supposed to know about at all. I wasn't trying to get close to Dugway. Honestly, I just wanted to shoot some desert landscapes, photograph the birds, and enjoy the silence. But on my second day, while studying one of my old topographic maps, I noticed an unmarked service road that branched off further west. It wasn't listed as restricted. I figured it might lead me to some cool vistas. More isolation, more photography. The road cut through nothingness for miles. No signs, no warning gates. But as I got deeper in, little things started feeling off. Tiny details you normally wouldn't notice. Thin metal poles standing in the distance, topped with barely visible antennae. Occasional low metallic humming, like faint generators or machines running in the background. But there was no power grid, no wires, no structures anywhere nearby. Then I saw it. Tucked into a jagged rock face, maybe a half-mile off the road, was an entrance, completely out of place. It wasn't natural, perfectly rectangular, carved with precision. Massive steel doors, partially ajar, leading into the mountain. No signs, no numbers, no flags. Just dirt tracks worn into the ground leading straight up to it. I knew better. Every instinct told me to turn around. But curiosity, it has a way of pulling you deeper. I took out my camera, stayed at a safe distance, and zoomed in. Mounted cameras flanked the doors, military grade. Still, no guards, no vehicles. The whole thing looked deserted. But the strangest part was the air itself. There was a charge to it. My skin prickled. My hair stood on end. Like static electricity, but stronger. I snapped a few photos. That's when I heard it. A deep, rhythmic humming came from inside. Mechanical, but not quite. It was low, pulsing, almost like something enormous was powering up behind those doors. I stared, frozen. Then I noticed movement. Two figures appeared in the shadows of the entrance. They weren't in standard military fatigues. Instead, they wore sleek silver bodysuits, almost reflective, with full helmets covering their heads. The visors mirrored the desert light, and they moved stiffly, like their limbs didn't bend right. They didn't walk. They glided. One of them paused and slowly turned its helmet toward me. It was too far to see facial features, but it was like it knew I was there, like it sensed me. My ears suddenly popped, as if I was thousands of feet in the air. My head felt compressed, vision blurred. A sharp ringing pierced my skull. I staggered back, my hands on my temples. Then came a new sound, the unmistakable thump of helicopter blades. Only I couldn't see anything. The sound grew louder, but the sky was clear. My entire body shook from the vibration beneath my feet. I ran. I ran like my life depended on it, which it probably did. The entire desert landscape warped as I sprinted, like heat waves twisting everything around me. I could feel those figures' eyes, if they were eyes, following me as I fled. I ran for several miles back to my vehicle, breathless, drenched in sweat. But the nightmare didn't stop there. As I drove out of the refuge, my paranoia wouldn't let me relax. I kept checking my mirrors. That's when I noticed the black SUV, unmarked, tinted windows, no license plate. It followed at a steady distance for hours. Every time I slowed, it slowed. If I pulled over, it stayed far back, waiting. Only when I reached the outskirts of Salt Lake City did it finally veer off, disappearing down a side road. Back home, I started digging for answers. I scoured forums, old conspiracy threads, even military aviation message boards. I found scattered reports of strange lights seen near Fish Springs, silent aircraft, hovering objects, even whispers of underground labs tied to Dugway. Nothing official, of course, but the stories were too consistent to dismiss entirely. A few days later, my email locked me out. Then my laptop completely crashed, everything wiped clean. Gone. I took it to a repair shop, and the guy told me the hard drive was corrupted in a way he'd never seen before. Almost like it was remotely fried. Since that day, odd things have happened. My phone would randomly shut off. Calls would drop whenever I spoke about the trip. I received no official warnings, no knocks at my door, but the message was clear. I had gotten too close to something I wasn't supposed to see, and I can't shake what I saw inside that mountain. Were those people? Were they even human? Part of me wonders if they were testing something not meant for our world, or maybe something that never came from it in the first place. There are places in this world where the map fades into mystery, where the thick forests conceal more than just the wildlife. Deep within Oregon's Mount Hood National Forest whispers echo of strange people living far from the world we know. People who abandoned civilization long ago, or perhaps who were never entirely part of it to begin with. And sometimes, when the wrong person wanders too far off the trail, they see things that were never meant to be seen. What unfolds next is a chilling reminder that not all who disappear in the woods are taken by nature. I've followed your channel for a while now, and after seeing some of the stories you share, I finally worked up the nerve to tell mine. I don't know if this was some twisted group of people or something far worse. I still can't fully explain it, but I haven't been the same since it happened. It was late September of last year. I had taken a solo camping trip into Mount Hood National Forest. I usually go out a couple times a year, stick to the trails, enjoy the peace, and recharge. But sometimes, you get curious. You want to see what's beyond the marked paths, beyond the areas where tourists snap pictures. This time, I headed near the Badger Creek Wilderness, deeper than I ever had before. I wanted total isolation. The first couple of days were perfect, cool, crisp air. The kind of silence you only get that far from people. The trees swayed softly, the leaves gold and amber, and I didn't see another person for miles. But as the third evening rolled in, I started to get this unsettling feeling, like I wasn't alone anymore. Like eyes were on me, though every time I scanned the woods, there was nothing. The air felt thicker, heavier somehow. That night, after I crawled into my tent, I heard something. At first, it was light steps, not heavy enough to be a deer or a bear. Then I heard faint mumbling. Not words I recognized, more like gibberish, like people talking in a made-up language. I thought maybe it was the wind playing tricks. The footsteps circled my tent, slowly, deliberately. Something lightly dragged against the side of the tent fabric, like fingers tracing it. Then came the laughter, high-pitched giggling that sounded childlike but somehow very wrong, like it was pretending to sound playful. My blood ran cold. I lay frozen, barely breathing, until dawn broke. When I finally stepped out, my stomach dropped. All around my campsite were footprints, bare feet. Some prints were small, like children, and others much larger. But some weren't even human-shaped. Toes too long. Some with what looked like claws or long, hooked nails pressing into the dirt. I should have packed up right then. But instead, I convinced myself it was just some weird group of people messing around. Maybe squatters. Maybe some off-grid commune. Curiosity got the better of me. So I packed light and started hiking deeper. The further I went, the stranger it got. Carvings appeared on tree trunks, simple symbols at first, triangles, circles, and slashes, but then more complex, almost ritualistic markings. I passed carefully stacked stone piles, almost like shrines or markers. Birds stopped singing altogether. Even the insects went silent. The deeper I moved, the more the forest felt like it was pressing in on me. Then I saw them. Ahead in a clearing, maybe 50 yards out, were several structures. Crude huts fashioned from branches, mud, and moss. Skulls hung from their frames, small animal skulls, but some appeared far too large to be anything I recognized. Movement flickered between the huts. The people, if you could call them that, were thin, their skin sickly pale, almost translucent in the dim, filtered light. Their hair was patchy, stringy. Some moved on all fours, others stood hunched, swaying like they were listening to music I couldn't hear. Their limbs jerked in strange, twitchy motions. One stood chewing on something, raw meat, glistening red. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed myself behind a tree, heart pounding so hard it hurt. One of them, a taller one, snapped its head toward me, like it sensed me before it saw me. Its eyes, wide, bulging, had tiny pinprick pupils lost in white. A wet clicking sound came from its throat, like some insect or broken machine. Others started turning toward me as well. Panic finally took over. I ran, as fast as I could, crashing through branches, stumbling over rocks and roots. But they followed. I could hear them. Not steady footsteps, but erratic bursts of movement. Quick bursts, then silence, then another burst, closer. They weren't chasing me to catch me. They were playing with me. That giggling came back, surrounding me from all directions. I stumbled downhill, skidded, cut my hands and knees on jagged rocks. Every time I stopped for breath, I heard the clicking and whispering getting closer. At some point, I don't even know how long, I crashed through a thicket and stumbled onto a rough dirt service road. My legs were shaking so bad I could barely stand. Not long after, I saw headlights approaching. 2 hunters in an old pickup truck. They pulled over as I waved them down, disheveled, bleeding, shaking like a leaf. I tried to explain, but the words came out a mess. They exchanged a quick look. The older one told me softly that I'd probably wandered too close to the old camp, and that there were places in these woods folks stayed out of. Said it like it was common knowledge. His eyes looked haunted. They drove me back down to government camp without asking any more questions. I left Mount Hood that day and haven't returned. Since then, I've researched everything I can find about that area. There are stories, ones that don't make it into the brochures. Old tales of families who disappeared into the forest generations ago. People who interbred, isolated, and devolved into something else entirely. Feral, predatory. There's even talk about people who go missing on the trails. Too many, honestly, with cases left open or quietly dismissed. Every time I hear about another missing hiker on the news, I get that cold feeling all over again. Like I barely escaped a fate worse than death. I don't think these things eat people right away. I think they play first. And at night, even now, I still hear that giggling sometimes. I see those wide, pale eyes in my dreams. I don't know what I stumbled into out there, but I know they're still out there. And so, another strange encounter fades away. A trick of the mind, or something far more unsettling. That's for you to decide. Thank you so much for watching my stories. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support is what keeps this channel going.